Close the eyes. Just take a few breaths in and a few breaths out. And again, just connecting with that Divine Mother energy. Celebrating her in your heart. Thanking her. In your thoughts. Holding her in sincere reverence in your intentions. And drawing the hands together in front of the heart. And we'll lift our voices in one Om, followed by the invocation mantras. Taking a breath in. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om Ganana Antva Ganapati Gum Havamahe Kavin Kavinam Upamashravastamam Jesta Rajam Brahmanan Brahmanaspata Anashrin Vanuti Basita Sadhanam Mahaganapataye Namaha Prano Devi Saraswati Vajebhir Vajinivati Dhinama Vitriyavatu Ano Divo Brahataf Parvata Da Saraswati Ajata Gantu Yagnyam Havan Devi Jujushana Kritachi Shagmam Nova Chamushati Shrinotu Vagdevyai Namaha. And gently releasing the hands down, fluttering the eyes open. So good to see you all here today. Thank you to the retreat attendees for being here for the weekend and diving in deep for the studies of the Mother Durga. Excuse me. The day before we left India, we went from Varanasi up to Rishikesh. So we flew into Delhi, drove up to Rishikesh. It was a 6-hour drive. Stayed in Rishikesh for 2 days and then drove back down to Delhi to stay at a friend's house and then fly home. And on the way back down, there was a dust storm. I don't know if any of you, how many of you have been to India? Oh, okay. How many of you have seen a dust storm? It's crazy. Yeah, so everything was brilliant, vibrant like that outside. Sun was shining. You could see clear across to the other side of India. And then in a split second, you could see your hand in front of your face. And we were in the car driving. So I'm still working through that. Yeah. And it was amazing. It was just such an instantaneous change. And whenever I go to India, I'm reminded of the instantaneous change that happens every moment in life. Every moment. You walk through the streets of Varanasi or Rishikesh or pretty much anywhere else in India, and you're reminded of the significant extreme contrasts of life. From the sun to the cloud of dust, from the wealth to the poverty, from the life to the death. You're reminded of it all in a moment, in a split second of time. You face all of this. And it's so potent and powerful, especially when the heart is humble to it. When the heart is not humble to it, we become a bit judgmental. But when the heart is humble to it, it's merely another reminder of the difficulty that we as human beings face as we're traversing this life, making choices day in and day out that affect not only ourselves, but affect every other being around us, and even those that are distant from us. there's a beautiful concept called Indra's net. Indra is one of the aspects of divinity in Hinduism. And it's said that at the beginning of time, he cast a net over the universe. And that, you know how a net has intersections where it's tied? At each one of those ties, there's a gemstone. And that you can do something, you can flick a gemstone on this corner of the universe, and you will see it travel all the way to the other corner of the universe. There will be an impact in all corners of the universe from one action. In the West, we kind of call that the butterfly effect. But it's much older than what the West calls it. It's Indra's net. And that teaching is potentially thousands of years old. So we're reminded, whether you're going to India or walking down your own street, or just having a moment of quiet mindfulness, we're reminded of the impact of our own actions on ourselves and on all other beings near and far. So India is a powerful experience, but you don't have to go to India to have that experience. You have that experience right here. You keep your heart humble and you will always have those experiences of reminders. Keep your heart humble and your eyes open, and you will always see what it is that you need to see in order to bring you closer and closer to the awakening of your own true self. And that's not some spiritual hoo-ha talk which includes unicorns and, glitter. No, it's not that at all. The truth of the awakening of your own self is the humility and compassion of your own heart to know the truth of unity, of oneness. I look out at each of you in this room and I see an individual person who has led an individual life, who has individual experiences, very diverse experiences. But underneath of the physicality of you, there is an energy. And that energy is the energy of consciousness. And that we share. The consciousness that flows through you is the same exact consciousness that flows through me. The same exact consciousness that flows through nature and through all things everywhere. When we talk about unity in this tradition, we're not talking about some wild, crazy kind of concept that's meant to be romanticized. We're talking about the realization of that consciousness as it flows through each and every one of us and connects us in our dharmic path. And what is our dharmic path? Our duty to one another, to not harm each other, to be of service to one another, our duty to ourself, to live the kind of life that empowers the awakening of the self, and our duty to divinity, to not turn our back on that which is sacred and divine as best we can. The reality, though, is that whether you call it God, goddess, whatever name you go by, it doesn't really mind if you turn away from it, because it says you really can't, You think you can. Your ego tells you can turn away and walk away and be like, I'm mad at you, God. I'm not talking to you anymore. But the reality is that what you turned away from, you just turned toward, because there's no place that God isn't. And it's God that's actually turning. It's just that you've disguised it with the ego and denied its existence within you. So the Divine Mother says, have your fun, have your tantrum, do what you're going to do. At some point in time, the window will be open of opportunity to remember. And when that happens, you'll fall to your knees. You'll fall to your knees in sincerity. You'll fall to your knees in humility and humbleness, in love and compassion, and in gratitude. You won't fall to your knees because you've been conquered. You'll fall to your knees because you've been freed. Because you've been freed. You see the difference? It's such a difference. How many of you feel like you carry a burden on your shoulders through this life of some sort or another? Everybody's hand should be up. 2 hands, right? We feel that. But when we come into the space of the awakening of the self, it's like that burden disappears. And we understand it differently. We understand that it's not personal. That there's a level of necessary suffering in this life that we all go through. And then there's a lot of unnecessary suffering that we all play around with, that we don't have to, but we do anyway. Excuse me. And in that process of the awakening of the self, we begin to recognize that which isn't necessary. And we start to put it aside, you know. It's a fad that we've outgrown. It's a tendency that we understand no longer serves us. Wow. Today, in the world, that no longer serves us has become a tagline that has completely lost its genuine meaning. We say, well, I'm going to go through my friend list on Facebook and delete those which no longer serve me. I'm going to get rid of those things that no longer serve me. I'm going to push them away because they're not good enough for me. They're not doing what I want them to do. And that's not what that means. It's what we've contorted it to, for the most part. But it's the genuine meaning of that which no longer serves us is nothing other than our own behavior, our own belief systems, our own tendencies. Our lies no longer serve us, and they never really have. Our greed no longer serves us, and it never really has. Our hate and our anger and our lust and our rage and our delusion and our ignorance don't serve us. So let's put those things off to the side and say, let's try a different way. Let's try a way that is more closely aligned to the truth. And what is the truth? Unity. But to do so really does require a humble heart. Because otherwise, we're quite well programmed to believe that there's somebody waiting in line to take what we have and to knock us down a few rungs and to leave us way back there somewhere. And we've just worked so hard and scoured and clawed and climbed to get to where we are now. And so we've really been bred into a space of fear. And that fear stops us from seeing the value of unity. In the spiritual communities today, they do talk a lot about unity, but they're exclusionary. That's not unity. We have to be honest about our own hypocrisy. Segregation is not unity. Exclusion is not unity. Superiority is not unity. Unity is unity. You're all welcome. No matter. That is unity. So the idea of unity as being a pick and choose kind of an essence, that is something that doesn't serve us. We have to put it off to the side. This wasn't what I was going to talk about today, but it seems to be what's coming forward. So be it. You all know how that happens. So that which doesn't serve us. What doesn't serve us is looking at other individuals and feeling that they're not worth our time. They're not worth our effort. They're not worth our compassion. They're not worth our love. We need to move away from such silly things, because those things, they're hurtful. They're not only hurtful to the other person, but they're also hurtful to ourselves. They stunt our growth, our spiritual growth. They stunt our ability, our courage, our bravery, our intelligence. They stunt our intelligence when we behave that way. And why? Because they lead us to no other place other than guilt, shame, and more fear. And a kind of an internal anger that's oriented toward ourself that is very, very hard to rectify. We feel embarrassed of our own poor behavior, but too proud to say so. Too proud to own it. So, at this time of year, we chant to the Mother Goddess. We chant to Saraswati, to the Mother Durga, to the Mother Lakshmi, and to all of the other names of the Divine Mother. And we say, in your mercy and in your grace, illuminate within me the intelligence to know better, to know that which needs to be left on the wayside, and that which needs to be carried further. Illuminate that intelligence within me. Remove my ignorance. In the West, largely, particularly the American West, the word ignorance is like a 4-letter word. I was providing satsang one time, and I used that word, and somebody got really angry and walked out. And then they waited for me. And at the end, they came up and they said, I know that I left, and I just really felt like I had to tell you why. And I said, of course. What would you like to share with me? And they said, well, I really don't appreciate you calling me ignorant. And I said, well, are you telling me that there's no part of your life or mind or heart that's ignorant? I said, well, that's not what I'm saying. I just don't really appreciate you telling me that. And I said, okay, well, let's take a look at that. What is it that I actually said to the entire community? Was that as human beings, we tend to have ignorance within us. What do you think ignorance is? Well, you're saying I'm stupid. No, ignorance is not stupidity. They have nothing to do with one another. And she looked at me kind of perplexed. And I said, if you look ignorance up and you read the definitions of ignorance, the most basic definition of ignorance is to ignore. Period. Is there anybody here who isn't ignorant? We're all ignorant. We all ignore. We ignore that which is obvious and that which is right in front of our face. We ignore. We ignore our own intelligence. We ignore our own goodness in favor of an ego that is largely unhealthy. Not always unhealthy, but largely unhealthy. We ignore the capacity that we ourselves carry to bring goodness and light to this world in favor of an ego that is completely self-absorbed. So she said, oh, I'm kind of sorry I left now. I said, it's okay, you can come back next week. And she did. We have to stop that, though, you know what I'm saying? There's no insults here. I don't say anything to the community that I don't say to myself, I don't believe that any one person is more or less ignorant than another. I think we all have our challenges in that way. One person ignores one aspect of life, another ignores another. For all of us, that tendency causes suffering. In each and every one of us, the tendency toward ignorance breeds suffering. And it's not necessary. It doesn't have to be that way. In the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, he states very clearly, there is suffering that is unnecessary, and all unnecessary suffering in the future should be avoided ahead of time. So practice your yoga, i.e. meditation according to Patanjali. Practice your pranayama. Practice your devotional practices, whatever tradition you are adhered to. Practice. Because that is the only methodology to remove the veils of ignorance, is to become so devoted to the truth that there's no space left in your heart or mind for anything that is other than that. Do all traditions teach a different truth? No. All traditions teach the same truth, but the human mouthpieces speak differently. And they can be very confusing. Some people say, only this is the truth. I've always been taught, whenever someone says always or never, ignore it. Because, And I've also been taught by my beloved guru and many others, that Sanatana Dharma is the most inclusive tradition in the world. Because in Sanatana Dharma, the teachings are not religious. They're dharmic. Religion is a man-made construct. Dharma is a God-given duty. God, goddess, whatever you want to call that. So there's a big difference between those two things. And yes, you can have both. You can adhere to a particular religion and pursue your dharma. Just be mindful about what you're being told when it comes to unity, compassion, love, generosity, and nonviolence. Because in dharma, those things are quite clear. Generosity is, no matter who is in front of you, be equally willing to give without judgment and without concern of what they're going to do with it. Because once you have something and give it away, it no longer belongs to you. So you give in the name of that, give in the goodness of your heart, and let that be the end of it. When it comes to love and compassion, whoever is in front of you, no matter their status or stature, no matter their age, no matter whatever, love them equally. Have compassion for them equally and without judgment. Didn't Jesus say that? Very much so. So love and compassion with generosity. Give the entirety of your heart without concern of being hurt or having it not returned to you. Just love. And when it comes to unity, whoever it is that is in front of you, no matter who they are, no matter if they're human or non-human, no matter their age, no matter their gender, no matter their religion, no matter. Unity is unity, period. Period. Nonviolence. No matter who is sitting in front of you, no matter what your ego feels about that person, nonviolence equally to all living beings. Hurt none through uncontrolled emotions. Harm no one, human or not human. There's a lot that can be said for that, because there's always questions surrounding that. Well, what about eating meat? What about if I lose my temper and I say something and I didn't really mean to say it? You know, there's a vast extreme of questions surrounding nonviolence. And the answer to those questions all lie in mindfulness. They all lie in mindfulness. Do you know what you're saying? Do you know what you're doing? And do you really know why? Is there a different way? You don't have to kick a person when they're down. You don't have to insult them when they already know that they've made their own mistake. You don't have to keep bringing up the past. You don't have to prove your own superiority. All these things are violent. You don't need to let your anger take the reins. Instead, let love take the reins. And if love is truly guiding you, you won't hurt anybody. You won't hurt anyone. If love is truly guiding you, you will not harm anybody. Because love doesn't hurt people. Does that make sense? Yeah. So today, as we come to the end of Navratri, the 9 nights of the goddess, one of the goddesses that are invoked are the goddess Siddhidatri. And again, Siddhi means perfection, as I mentioned in class. And it's not like the human concept of perfection, but it's the perfection of the soul. It's the illumination of the truth of the self. And so we invoke her, we pray, we chant her mantras, we commit her pujas and her homas, and we spend this time contemplating and revering her, asking her to illuminate that intelligence that lets us see the truth of ourselves, see the truth of all beings everywhere, see the truth of unity. So I shared with you, and you have it here on your paper, this beautiful mantra, which asks her exactly for this. And so say after me, we'll speak it and then we'll chant it. Ya, Devi, Sarva, Bhuteshu, Buddhi, Rupenya, Samstita, Namastasye, 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 Namastasye. Now sometimes at the end of that you'll see Namo Namaha. Thank you so much. Thank you. You'll see Namo Namaha. So now chant after me. Ya Devi, Ya Devi, Sarva Bhuteshu, Sarva Bhuteshu, Buddhi Rupenya, Buddhi Rupenya, Samstita, Samstita, Namastasye, 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 Ya Devi, Ya Devi, Sarva Bhuteshu, Sarva Bhuteshu, Buddhi Rupenya, Buddhi Rupenya, Samstita, Samstita, Namastasye, 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 Namo Namaha, Namo Namaha. The translation is salutations again and again to the Devi who abides in all beings as intelligence. And the practice, as you're chanting this, is to bring awareness to your own intelligence. To not put all of your faith into the first story that jumps forward, the first reaction that jumps forward, the first expectation that jumps forward, and even the first understanding that jumps forward. Don't put all of your investment in those things. Instead, practice mindfulness, paying attention to yourself, going deeper, even taking a few moments to take apart the story, to take apart the reaction, and to see if you can follow it to its root. And if its root is fear, then it's not genuine. It's got a reality to it that's embedded in this life, but it's not real with a capital R. In other words, it's based in something that happened in the past that is no longer happening. It is a reaction. It is a reaction. It is a fear-based reaction. But if you follow the thought, the feeling, the impression to its root, and you find that there's a softness there, that there's a love there, that there's an intention that all beings should be happy and free from suffering, that there is a joy there, even if that joy is clouded a bit by sadness, that there's still a joy at the idea that even your worst enemy can come to know her and be alleviated of their suffering, and that you truly hope that for them. That's genuine. That's the illumination of your own intelligence. that you would literally long for and pray for the healing of your own worst enemy. And everybody takes a big breath in and a big breath out. That's the teaching, And that's what we ask for when we ask for the illumination of our own intelligence. Is to no longer allow me to just play in the shallow end of the pool. Let me dive in the deep end for a little while and see exactly what it would take for me to embrace the goodness that exists in my own worst enemy. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, my own worst enemy is that person who did me wrong, who broke my heart, who harmed me in some way, shape, or form. And most certainly that might be the first impression of your own worst enemy. But if we were to follow that a little bit deeper, who is your own worst enemy? Yeah. Goosebumps. Because you all went like that. So for those people that you think you're mad at, and for yourself who you're genuinely mad at, can you equally and without discrimination long for and work for and intend for their absolute healing? That's the only way that you'll uncover that intelligence that's been graced upon you by her. Because for as long as you hate yourself, you'll always find an excuse not to. Say, I want spiritual awakening, but I don't want to give up my vices. Why should I have to give up my vices if I'm spiritually awakened? I shouldn't have to give up anything, right? I want spiritual awakening, but I don't want to give up my anger at that person, because if I do, then, people are going to think I'm weak. People are going to think badly of me. They're going to think I'm a pushover. I want spiritual awakening, but take the but out of the scenario and dive into your own inner intelligence, what you have inside of you already. You don't need to cultivate it. You don't need to make it. You don't need to discover it. You just need to be it, because it's already there for you. We use words like cultivate understanding, create a practice that brings about awareness. But the reality is the intelligence is already in you, in every single cell of your being. Every cell of your being already knows. It's your mind that says, nope, not going there, not doing that. I have a better plan. I like the drama. I'm going to stick with that for a while and see where it gets me. So we chant. We chant to the mother and we say, please, I'm just so confused. There's so much confusion. I have pulls in different directions. One part of me drawing me into the direction of self-gratification and ego. The other pulling me into a direction that's kind of the middle road. It's like there's some practice of goodness there, but it's quite selective. And then there's another pull, which I don't really understand and I'm scared to death of. Because that pull, at a very deep level of ourself, we know that pull means the death of what we think we are and the acceptance of what we actually are. And most people are just not quite ready to give up the grudges yet. But every single person is more than capable of doing it, because that is the pilgrimage of your life and lives. That is the pilgrimage of your dharma. It's what you're meant to do as soon as you're ready, as soon as you decide, yes, I'm going to dive in without the life jacket, without the story, without the grudge, without the condition. No. Any questions or reflections yet? We had to finish the weekend with a bang, right? I mean, yeah. No questions yet? No reflections? Yes?
My father, when I was growing up, we had a very volatile relationship. Extremely volatile. You would hear us arguing up the mountain, and the four-letter words were echoing off the hills.
Yeah.
It was not just verbally, it was physically as well. And the past couple of years, I've noticed I've forgiven him. You know, I've seen how he's changed, and I let all that go. And he just passed the other day. But I'm so grateful that I let that go. You know, and didn't carry all that anger with me, all of those grudges, because it really only held me back.
Yeah.
I see exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
I feel what you're saying.
When someone passes, we say, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May there be peace in their heart. May there be peace in the realm that they are in. And may there be peace throughout the universe to welcome them home. Yeah. And I'm so sorry for your loss. But I'm also grateful for the gaining of understanding that you have.
Yes. I was grateful for it.
Yeah.
To find the beauty that was actually there. We would joke that the reason he knew me so well when I would try to sneak out of the house or something, you know, it was because he did the same thing when he was a teenager.
Totally. Yeah.
It was like we were so connected and probably fueled some of the volatility. So, yeah.
It's really amazing, you know, when I hear something like that, and just in my own experience, quite similar, lots of arguing and cursing and whatnot. And what I see in my mind now, as I look back at that, is I see a movie reel. And in the movie, everybody is pained. Everybody is just so being prickled by needles that they just, it's like they've all fallen into a cactus or something, and they don't know what to do with the pain. And they're lashing, trying to remove these cactus needles. And they're throwing them somewhere just to get them away from them. And what they're throwing them toward are other people because they don't know. They just don't know. And then pretty soon, everybody there is full of these cactus needles. And nobody knows what to do. Does that make sense?
That's good.
Yeah. 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 It's like, what do we do? We could sit in a circle and slowly remove them from each other. But we don't, because at that moment, we're in a state of fight or flight or freeze. We're in that state of sympathy in the nervous system. And it's not sympathy like sympathy where I have empathy for you. It's that the nervous system is trying to figure out what to do, and it's all confused and contorted, and it wants to run, and it wants to hide, and it wants to freeze, and it wants to, do whatever as a reaction. When we look at the past and we recognize the movie reel, then we can apply what we've learned to today. We can break the cycle, as it were. So that when we see situations that are similar to that, in our own families, with our own children, with our friends, in our communities, instead of throwing these cactus needles wildly around and letting other people experience that same pain, we can say, we need to sit in a circle. We need to see how to best support one another. Because it's only through that best support of one another that all those needles make their way to the garbage can or something, or the compost bin, or whatever it happens to be. Silly example, but I think y'all understood what I was trying to say. I hope. Yeah. Can you all relate to that in your own life and relationships? It's very human to start flailing. Totally. The flailing is part of the ego reaction, you know? And the ego is not a bad thing either. I know sometimes, I hear people say, oh, spiritual teachers, they always think the ego is bad, bad, bad. It's like, no, that we don't think the ego is bad. We just have an understanding that the ego has two phases, healthy and not healthy. And that most times it's not healthy. You know when the ego is healthy? When you're supporting. When you're not afraid to love. When you're willing to serve. When you're not looking for an excuse or an out. When you're not avoiding. When you're facing. Straightforward. That's when the ego is healthy. When the ego is unhealthy, we say, this intelligence is a nice thought, but nah. I'm going to go do this other stuff instead. And the only reason why we're choosing the other stuff is because we're deeply and sincerely afraid of what life is like without that other stuff. Because we haven't given ourselves the chance to see, to figure it out, to experience it. I'm trying to think of a good example. Who went to college in here? Anybody? Okay, so a few of you went to college. Anybody ever change schools like in high school? Right? Okay. So I think that pretty much covers everybody in the room. So when you went off to college, did you know where you were going? Did you know you'd have friends there? When you changed schools in the middle of high school, did you know you'd have friends there? Did you know you'd pass your classes? No, but you went anyway. In some part, in the high school change, maybe you didn't have too much of a choice. But in the college, you certainly had a little bit of a choice of where to go. You could have stayed close to home where you would know some people. But most oftentimes, we go off to some place on the other side of the country, and we take a chance. Why do we take a chance? Because we want to know about the mystery of what is not in front of us. Yet, when in spirituality we're asked to take a chance on the essence of the truth of your own soul, we say, I'm going to go to the college that's closest to home. Not willing to take that chance. And yet, most of you know that college is such a formidable experience. It changes you. You're not the same person when you leave college that you were when you went in. And you're not the same person that leaves high school that went into high school. You're always changing. You're always discovering some new aspect of yourself. So why on earth are human beings so afraid of learning about their whole self? If you're always changing anyway, and you never know what tomorrow holds, never mind an hour from now, why not just take the chance? Put the childish behaviors off to the side. Allow yourself to be more generous, more loving, more compassionate, more forgiving, more present, more aware, more intelligent, more devoted, more. Why not? What do you have to lose? Except for everything. Oh, tell that story. Okay. So there's a Beatles song. I love this Beatles song. Across the Universe. Do y'all know it? Yeah. And that was a pretty, I don't know if it was like a super popular song when I was a teenager, but it was in my environment. My brothers were big Beatles fans, and so was I. And I always used to love that song. I just listened to it for hours, really. Nothing's gonna change my world. 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 Such an egotistical perspective on that song. Do you see what I'm saying? So as a teenager, listening to that song, and even into my early adulthood, like in my 20s or whatnot, whenever I heard that, it always kind of had that ring to it of, nothing's going to change my world because it's my world, and I'm the author of it. So there. You don't like it? Whatever. But then one day, and I just might have a few tears over this because I usually do. I'm in my car driving, of all places. That's usually where I have my epiphanies. I'm in my car driving, and I hadn't heard that song in like years. Years I hadn't heard that song. And I had been going through some health challenges. I had had some surgeries and some other things. And I'm driving, and all of a sudden, that song comes on the radio. And not only had I been having some challenges health-wise at that point, but I had also had a renewed deep dive into my spiritual inquiry. I had met my guru. I had been meditating for long periods of time every day. And that song started to play, and it said, "Nothing's gonna change my world. Nothing's gonna change my world. Nothing is going to change my world." The essence of nothingness is going to change everything. The moment you surrender to it, nothing will change your entire world. It will never be the same again. And I was crying so profoundly, I had to pull my car over. I couldn't drive. And in that moment, I just realized a little bit of that inner intelligence. It's like the curtain got pulled back. And there was a very loud voice who's always been with me. Sometimes I listen more profoundly than others. And she said, "Let it all go. It's better to have nothing to hold on to than to have all these things that you're carrying." So I did. Or at least I started to. It's a path, Lifelong, lifetimes long path. So next time you hear that song, sing it from the place of knowing that there is a profound value to nothingness. A profound value. And there's a deep, deep inherent intelligence in that, which includes letting go of that which doesn't serve you. And the only things that don't serve you are your own misnomers, misunderstandings, and your own ignorance. So put those down and choose something different. There's a second mantra on this sheet, and this is actually a waking up practice. And once you've been studying this for a little while, you know that there are many names, but there's only one God. There's many, many different names. Some of the names are feminine, some of the names are masculine, but there's only one God. And so whatever name it is that we're invoking, we're simply calling out to that. This mantra's translation is, I visualize Lakshmi. Lakshmi is the goddess of abundance. She's the aspect of the Mother Durga that is the maintainer. She is the one that brings forth whatever is needed to sustain whatever is needed to be sustained. I visualize Lakshmi, abundance, in my fingers. I visualize Saraswati, knowledge and wisdom, in the palms of my hands. And I visualize Vishnu, the essence of all that is, in the base of my palm. in the morning as I gaze upon my hands. So once you commit this mantra to heart, then you can chant it in the morning when you first wake up as you're gazing at your hands, acknowledging the abundance, the inherent wisdom and intelligence, and the consciousness that is the essence of all that is. So say after me, Kara Gre Vasate Lakshmi Kara Madhye Saraswati Kara Mule Tu Govinda Prabhate Kara Darshanam Kara Gre Vasate Lakshmi Kara Madhye Saraswati Kara Mule Tu Govinda Prabhate Kara Darshanam Kara Gre Vasate Lakshmi Kara Madhye Saraswati Kara Mule Tu Govinda Prabhate Kara Darshanam Now look at your hands. And while that's still playing itself in your mind, just see the essence of divinity there. And in your heart, know that the purpose of these hands is to give, is to love, and is to serve. Unity. Any questions or reflections for today? No? Let's sit tall and close the eyes. You draw the hands together in front of the heart. And we'll lift our voices in one very powerful Om. Breathing in. And 3 times sing this with me. Nothing's gonna change my world. 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 Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om Peace, Peace, Peace. Om Shri Matre Namaha. Thank you all so much for being here today. I've missed you all so much. It's such a sweetness to go, and it's such a sweetness to come home. It's just all sweetness, you know? Wonderful. Thank you all. Enjoy your brunch if you're going to have some now. Travel safely if you're heading out. To our retreat attendees, thank you so much for being here this weekend. You all brought so much forward in this experience. To Michelle and to all of our volunteers, thank you so much for everything that you do. It's just so amazing. Have a good day, everybody. Yes?
Thank you. Would it be possible to post the mantras, like a recording, so we can practice?
Yes, absolutely. And so take that with you. That's your copy. And then I will send out that and the one from yesterday.
They were actually free from yesterday, questions about it.
Oh, which ones were they?
During kirtan, we talked about the Lakshmi and the Saraswati.
Oh, yeah,
We
yeah.
were kind of playing with them
Oh,
this
the
morning
three
during-
seeds. Yeah.
We were kind
Okay.
of playing with them during japa this morning, but it was a little unsure.
Exactly. Very good. Very good. I'll send those over also.
Remember